That's illegal. Papers with eagles from a trade, that's illegal. That's illegal.
How's it going, everyone? James here. Welcome to this first tutorial over on YouTube. I'm going to be trying to do a few, well, I say a few, I'm going to be doing a lot of production videos over on here, which try and cover the underground electronic music spectrum. As someone who also makes music, I've often found difficulty learning about specific aspects, so I'm going to try and be covering that on this channel. But I'll be doing another video introducing the channel shortly. This particular tutorial is going to be about how to make music like Kettama. And he's quite an interesting artist who makes music across a lot of styles. So this, as you will have heard in the intro, is kind of like his more housey, ravey, you can classify it as that style, as opposed to like his SoundCloud stuff, which is a bit faster. So I'm going to try and cover all of his sound within this tutorial, or that particular style anyway, with some more tutorials to come that focus on more specific elements and how you can recreate those. So yeah, if you find any value from this video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe to get notified about different videos to come, which there will be, I promise. Yeah, you can get all the resources I mentioned from the link in the description, including a sample pack in the style and the tutorial here. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's just get into it. Okay, so this is the project file that you heard in the intro. We're at 130 BPM, which is like your kind of standard tempo for house. He does have his faster music, like I said, which could go up to like 140. So yeah, these are like all the different elements. You've got your vocals, your drums, your bass, and your synths, like how I like to grip them. In terms of like the arrangement, you've basically got like your breakdown, which doesn't have all the elements. It's like more stripped back, less going on basically. And then
That's illegal.
basically where all the elements come in, and it's like proper driving. So yeah, let's just go for each of these elements. So in terms of like your vocal, he basically uses a lot of like these hip hop, pitched up hip hop vocals. So I've taken the
That's illegal.
sample from Fast Life by Nas. Basically any hip hop vocal could probably do. You're basically looking like chop up these vocals and use like one or two
That's illegal.
Words from that vocal. Well, there's kind of like three ways you could do it. You could have like a complete vocal, or you could have like little ad libs, or like even like bad example.
That's illegal.
You could have like one word basically. You'll know what I'm talking about if you listen to like a lot of his music. It basically like lyrics where they're like speaking, or yeah, I'll go into that a bit more detail in another video.
That's illegal.
But yeah, basically you've got this vocal pitched up.
Papers with eagles from a trade, that's illegal.
It's the same phrase but expanded a bit more.
That's illegal.
And it kind of like finishes the phrase nicely. In terms of placement, there's not really like a strict rule for it. So yeah, basically any hip hop vocal chopped up, and you're in a good place. Chopped up and pitched up. In terms of like its internal processing, I've basically got an EQ to clean it up. An EQ which boosts. If you use that tool, you can hear like specific frequencies. So it's quite a stark vocal, especially when it's been pitched up.
That's illegal.
That brings it out, and then the overdrive brings it out even more. And it's overdriving that specific frequency.
That's illegal.
Makes it really stark. It's quite a decent effect to use. And then in terms of like my sends and returns, so I like using a combination of both. I've basically got your standard reverb, standard delay, and then an additional ping pong delay, an echo, and compressor, which is quite a hard compressor, and that's for like parallel compression. It's quite a good technique to use to beef up your samples. So for the vocals, that's being sent to basically all of them apart from the compression.
That's illegal.
So a lot of delay and some reverb is what it's being sent to. So in terms of like your kick sample, so like the build is like a stripped. It's like a stripped version, and then you've got like your standard 4/4 kick. In terms of like your MIDI, in terms of like your sample itself, I'll take off the processing, that makes a difference. It's quite like a techno-y kick, almost, anyway. So it's from my pack, and I'm pretty sure I started with a 909. I think you can get pretty close to the result with his 909. This would be another aspect that I'd probably focus on in a bit more depth. Could probably be a whole separate tutorial. So I start with a 909. I use various processing, like saturation, distortion, overdrive, that kind of thing on those samples. It's got a decent amount of high end, but like still the stuff you need in the low end. So I've basically dampened that. Brought out a little bit, cut out what I don't particularly need, or want anyway. Then beefed it back up with drum bus. As opposed to like, that's too techno-y for me. So I always do the EQ, clean up what I can, and then apply the effects. Like I said, there was a lot of effects on that sample, which went into when I was making each of the elements of the pack, which I'll probably break down in some more detail, but that's like the processing I've used. If you already want some of these kicks, you can just get them from and then I've got the bass mono setting, basically just makes sure that it's mono compatible. And then that's going into some parallel compression, which, like I mentioned, quite heavy. Basically to beef it up a bit more. Then I've got this clap, which is on the 1 and the 4, not the 1 and 4, the 2 and the 4. It's got some reverb that it's being sent to, and internally it's got EQ to clean it up, sidechain delay, which is quite interesting. It basically ducks every time the kick hits. Because you don't want that dragging on, do you? And then that's mixed with the dry signal. It's kind of a bit of both, and then that's being saturated. We've bumped the drive up and added some color. And then you've got your hats. That's like a saturated 909, I believe. That's that sample. It's quite long as well, so it's quite sustained. Filtered out the low end and added saturation just to give it some color. And that's pretty much that for that. Got this closed hat, same kind of concept with the sample. I'm pretty sure it's 909. Sustain's been brought down, make it quite snappy. And then that would be it's sidechained. Basically with the sidechain you're wanting to duck out the way of the elements that matter most, which is why I've used sidechain for the kick and sidechain for this hat. Because you don't want it being constant. So by ducking every time the open hat hits, you're creating movement. I've got this filter cleaning up, similar job to what the EQs would do. And some saturation on the sample itself. And then I have included an 808 cymbal rolling out quite a lot. It just kind of adds a bit more texture to that high end. And then on the hats, I've got EQ, basically cleaning up, as I normally do. Saturation, to beef all the samples up, kind of act as a glue as well. And then this auto filter being automated. Show that again because I'm aware that it didn't show. It's basically just building. So yeah, it's like a stripped, the breakdown's a stripped back version, so that it's not got all its frequencies, and then as soon as this hits, it all comes in. It's a pretty standard arrangement trick, especially with like kick and bass, where you take out the low end. It's basically doing the opposite. Then on all the drums, let's just play them all. I have a glue compressor to glue them all together, where I've basically brought the threshold down so it's barely moving, so like they aren't over compressed, because you don't want to over compressed drum, so it's just doing something. And I brought the gain up on that, so it's all the volume that it lost has been made up for basically, and then all that's being saturated again. You'll be noticing a recurring theme here. In terms of the bass, a lot of the time his bass lines are like toms, or you just don't find bass lines in his music because his drums occupy that frequency. But this particular Eastside Avenue track does have a bass line. So like in terms of the sound design, it's kind of similar. I basically used a sine wave, 1 octave down, saw 1 up, frequency being brought down, the sustain's been brought down, and then this is kind of what makes the difference, because it's like really subby. As soon as you bring it up, there's more presence basically. So all that's processing. I've boosted a lot of the sub end to make up for what's being lost, because I've taken this out to make room for the kick, because it's got a lot of analog high end, but there's still some sub from this part. And then I've cut highs, sidechain to the kick, not too much, saturated it and bass monoed it, and then to saturator I've brought the bass part up of that as well. That's pretty much it for the bass. Like I said, like his music doesn't tend to have bass lines, or has like different types, but with this song, it's kind of like the principle. Before I forget, like the MIDI, just kind of like a groovy pattern, to be honest. Like I don't think there's like a predefined reel with this one. And then finally, with your synths, you've got the main stab, which is the same stab he uses in his song, which has been sampled. You can create these from scratch, and that'll be another video breaking down the stabs. But he's sampled this from a song called Brighter Day by Smoking Beats. In terms of the pattern, whoops. It's quite choppy. It's got like a mixture of your long notes with like short. You could really like properly make those a lot shorter. You could add in more. Go mad really with this kind of pattern. 3 notes, pretty basic. In terms of MIDI, in terms of like its channel strip, I've like all the processing for this particular sound is on the chain. I've used a velocity, which is like a MIDI effect, which basically you can adjust the randomness so that what you might do with like adjusting these within the actual clip, you can basically set it so it randomly decides how loud that sample is, which can have some interesting effects. And this is the sample. I've not done anything to it. I've cleaned it up using EQ, boosting certain sounds, because if you are taking a sampling approach, you probably want to clean up these sounds, especially if you do it directly from a song as opposed to a pack. Then you've got reverb, got some delay, quite short, because you don't want that clashing, because it's quite fast and there's a lot of notes. I'm also sidechaining this to the kick. The filter is for the breakdown. As you'll see, releases all of it. Similar aspect to the hats. Saturation, there's quite a lot of it. It's making in this case, it's kind of making more of a difference to its volume than its than the actual sound. Which you'll probably hear you'll hear the volume change more than the effect is making, but like saturation's bringing out those certain frequencies, so it's a nice effect to have on that kind of sample. The multiband does a similar thing. So it's like I've basically made it so it's adding more high frequencies, which kind of like, it kind of sound like radio a bit. Sound like something coming out of radio. Slightly reduced these. And then I've done a final EQ cut there. This sample here is the same sample, but with different processing. So it's based, in terms of like its internal, it's got nothing on it at all. It's the same sample, but it doesn't have like all the delays and compression and saturation multiband effects on it. And the way it's like been programmed, I've kind of placed it so it's right next to basically filling in the gaps. it's like a counter melody basically. And the suddenly processing is on the returns. So it's quite a nice addition. Like I said, there's so many different like approaches you can take with like this kind of melody. And this is just the one I've opted for. Doesn't mean it's a thing you have to do. And I've got this kind of like a synthetic string pluck sample. The same kind of sample that you find in Eastside Avenue. I don't really know how to describe it, but like I've used analog, I've used a sine and a saw, both up 1 octave. Brought the sustain down. There's not really much to that particular sample, that particular sound anyway. Just kind of like your analog synth. It's like a fill basically. Quite nice addition. It's another counter melody basically. EQ'd it. Standard EQ, bit of chorus. Very small amount of chorus, like you can't even really hear it, but it does do its stuff. And then saturation again, sending to all the reverbs and delays. Then finally, just like a tension string, which you can have in like a breakdown. So it's just search for any string sample, throw it into a sampler, and then basically play one big long note in your MIDI. And I think by default it loads onto this sustain mode. You basically want to change it to that so that it keeps going. No matter if the sample ends or not, it basically fades in and out. And then I've basically just EQ'd it out. There's not much more to that sample, to be honest. And there's not much more to this project. That's going to be it. I hope this helped any of you who are interested in learning about Kettama's sound. Hopefully you can take something from this and implement it into your own production style. If you're making similar music, and even if you're not making similar music, there's still stuff you can take away from this. Be sure to like, if you did like the video, subscribe for those future videos I mentioned. Like I said, there's going to be more focused videos, so I might not have touched on something in as much depth as you wanted on this, but particularly with regards to like his stabs, like making similar vocals, hard hitting drums, that kind of stuff. There will be separate videos for that, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss them. Yeah, and just as a recap, you can get all the resources and find out more about the series in the link in the description. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. Have a good one.
That's illegal.